Hello, I'm male feminist Anders Bloom. Give you a big welcome.
By the way, to go back again to the events, just like you did the Blast Paris Major, you then also, like another area that you're actually quite unique in terms of how quickly you're being fast-tracked up. But by the way, I would, to give you your flowers, I would say part of the reason why isn't a coincidence. You didn't trip over and get these events. What that means is people probably really enjoyed working with you, or people saw that actually you're more of a finished product than you realised, even though, and actually this is your secret weapon. Your secret weapon is that you are older and that you are a real CS fan, because that way, everyone who's only seen you on 3 events is expecting actually a very low standard. They're expecting you to just be very generic and basic, and instead you're showing off all this like game knowledge and all the people in the space and making jokes and being professional. Like I say, you don't trip over your words. People might not know, by the way, I keep referencing that because technical aspects are actually so key to making things that are like funny and clever come across. If you fuck up how you're saying it, or you say the word wrong, so actually to take someone out of it. So these aren't like minor things. I think people actually would be very impressed, because as well as doing the major, you literally then did the next Cologne and the next Katowice. These are the biggest events you can do in Counter-Strike. Like, you've done some dog shit. You basically completed the game within 1 year. Like, that's pretty good.
I was very lucky. I think it was also just because they did the B stream for Cologne and Cato, and then they made that decision that they didn't want it to be the B stream. They wanted
there was some good games on that too. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so they had this like whole idea where ESL basically was like, okay, now we're going to change this up where we're going to have 2 streams running, but before we'd call it the B stream,
yes,
and we'd kind of have commentators but now we're just going to do like 2 full-on discs and full streams on either side. So whatever you watch, the idea was that it should be at a high level. I think the timing was just right that they decided to do that. So all of a sudden you go from needing 2 desk hosts to needing 4. So that's great, because like for desk hosts, it's really hard to get a space in, right?
Sure.
Like the guys at the top kind of hold that space, and there's maybe like the tier 1, there's 2 desk host roles if you're lucky, in an event, and then come tier 2, they don't have the budget for desk host, so there isn't really opportunity. I think it was the right time that straight after the major they decided to do that. And then I'd like to think that like I'm fun to work with. I don't think I come with too much drama or difficulty. I kind of just go with the flow. So I'm hoping that was why. And also I think that like we did sick desks for that first Cologne. Like we just did really. I think that was the first time I worked with Kassad. I had Maui, and then they also ESL did this thing where they weren't going to have like A stream analysts and B stream analysts, which I think was such a brilliant idea. Is they basically were like, the analysts will jump between the streams each day. To me, that was really clever because 1, I think that it gave gravitas to the games that were on the B stream. But then 2, for someone like me, then that's my chance to work with Yanko, who I would never get to work with otherwise, and get to work with Moses. And then it was Maui was there and Kassad was there, and that was like the desk segments. And I think we're allowed to talk about Maniac. Maniac was there. I don't agree with what Maniac did outside of the server, but he was good on a desk. So like
very good, yeah.
I got to work with like the best analysts in the game. And I do believe this is true of anything in life, but when you work with the best, you just get better. You don't have to ask them for feedback. You don't have to ask them to teach you. You just have to stand next to them for 5 minutes and watch the way they work, and you will learn, and they will make you better, and you will improve. And that for me was like, I think I was just really lucky that I got those events at the time that I did, because I think it was a level up, but they also helped me level up even faster just because of the people that I got to like work with. And not only in front of camera, but behind camera. Because I think that first Cologne, I got to work with like, he had stood in last minute because a producer couldn't get a visa, which is a guy called Tom Eric, who has produced so many big events.
ESL's done pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, and like, you get to work with someone like that. And that is a producer that I went with some crazy shit. I was like, let's do this. And he was like, okay, let's do this. Okay. He just never said no to anything. It was mental. And like he let us, my favorite desk segments I've ever done was the heroic ends game on the B stream for IEM Cologne 2023. It wasn't even a decider. They had both made it through to the playoffs. It was just a placement game.
Right.
And while that game was happening on the A stream was an Astralis game, and that was a decider, and that was like a really important game. And we had this game where everyone was like, oh, no one's even going to watch that. And the night before, Tom Eric was like, what do you want to do? And I had Maui and Kassad. And I was like, I just want them to, like, let's just go to war. Like, let's just make it the most absurdly ridiculous desk. And those guys were so good. So each of them took a team, and then they just came up with the most absurd points. But they were like, I can't even remember, like the one, it was basically like this team is just better because of whatever random fact. Super on either side, and then just sat on the desk telling each other how, I think Kassad at one point told Maui that like he was an idiot, and Maui told him he was an old man going blind. Like it was just full on Maui and Kassad performative. And that to me was like the best desk we've ever done, because Tom Eric had all the assets running at the same time. And while they were doing these like ridiculous statements, they were actually kind of bringing it back to the teams in question in a very clever way that I just don't think people truly appreciated what they did in that moment, because even though Kassad and Maui were both making ridiculous statements, they would follow the statements up with like really interesting facts and like deep dive into certain plays, but they used the humor to kind of create that. And I think at one point people were going on the A stream chat telling them to come watch the B stream because the desk was on.
Right.
And that was, yeah, and Tom Eric still sits us afterwards. He was like, guys, like the viewership shot up when the desk was on. And that was really sick. And that was I would say it was like my favorite desk I've ever done. But it was also one of those things where like it was just the right people at the right time. Kassad and Maui knew each other really well. So they could trust each other to go down there and all of that. And it was just really fun. And that was such a good example of what happens when you just put the right people together. And it was the right game to do it as well.
Okay, I want to ask a question that goes like this. So obviously we do a podcast together, Feed the Trolls, on your YouTube channel. And one of the interesting things is, I obviously know my side of the origin story, but actually I saw you told some of it on B-Side Baddies or whatever it was, the show with Donna. But I want to actually get your take here, because essentially it goes like this. I've done shows and podcasts with a lot of people. I've done a lot of podcasts in my time. I've got a lot of reps in. And so for me, one of the key things about doing a podcast is, in an ideal world, the co-hosts should have like some level of rapport. Like they've got to be people who know each other a bit or get along in some way, because that's going to be the foundation of the conversation and the show. And you're also going to be able to tell very quickly. I see this when I see people artificially put podcasts together. I can tell if those two people don't talk at all, or even worse, if they don't even like each other. That's going to actually, they might not think it, because they might be being really professional, but in doing so, it's actually obvious that they just don't have like an actual human rapport. And in your case, like I've done this with a few people in the past. If one of the things that really pisses me off is if I like someone on the desk at events, and then because I actually am in the privileged position where if I DM someone, they'll reply about this, I often tend to ask just selfishly, like, are you working the next event? Are they hiring you for this one? If I see a talent announcement come out and I think, wait a minute, this person shouldn't, Jan could be on there. What about that? I'll DM them and be like, what's going on? Like, why didn't they hire you for that? Or is there something going, do you have some beef for that to you? Or are they out on you or something? And so what would happen is, I remember for months, I would ask you, like, are you getting this event? Or I'd be like, oh, wow, you got this one here. And there was just, let's just say there was a brief period where even though if someone goes on your Wikipedia, you'll be doing events. Maybe you weren't doing all the events you wanted to, or you weren't getting some of the bigger events. And I thought at the time, you've already earned your stripes at the other lands. You should probably get hired for that one. So I did my move where basically the angle is, let's start a podcast. But the premise for me always is, it's basically going to be like the best sizzler reel you could ever have for who might hire you to do a CS event. So I basically said to you, all I remember saying the purview was, just think up an idea. Basically, you have the total creative control of what the idea was, but try and think of some vehicle where basically it's going to showcase like what you want to be like on a desk, so that the idea is someone watching that podcast, because one of the actual benefits a lot of other talent maybe don't realize is, as well as fans, if you've got a popular podcast, a lot of industry people watch shows like that because, by the way, they want to know what the narratives are and what the big talking points are. And they also want to know things like that. Like they want to see people who are guests and go, maybe I would hire him as an analyst, or maybe I want to work with this guy here. And so that was the purview from my side. Now, look, I didn't know what it would become and how we would structure it. You made a lot of the choices about how that's good. Give me your sense of how did we do this podcast, and what do you think of it? What do you think of that show that we do?
I've said on Feed that the idea of Feed the Trolls was like there for a while, where I was like, I always wanted to do it, and I suppose I didn't think about podcasts. I thought about as a desk. I was like, instead of doing the formulaic thing we do, what I think we should do in group stages is we should just go online and see what everyone's talking about.
That would be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was always like, well, let's talk about the roster change. That's what people actually want.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk about if a new map is coming in, let's talk about that. If that's what everyone's talking about, that's what they want to know. Let's like deep dive it, so it's not just like a couple of tweets, and like actually break it down. And that was always in my head, but I was like, I'm not at a place where I can go to a producer and be like, let's shove your whole concept here and just do this for 30 minutes, because the people watching these games know these players, they know these teams. Let's talk about what they're interested in. And then you sent me a DM, and you were saying, have you been hired for this? And I was like, no one's really reaching out, and I'm not getting much, and I don't know what to do. And you said, you you should start your own thing. It's a good way for you to be seen. It's a good way for you to showcase. And I remember you said, I'll help you and I can get you guests, but we need like a concept. And then I was like, oh, well, I'll get back to you with some ideas. And the moment you said we need a concept, I was like, I know exactly what I want to do. But then obviously I was like, oh, but maybe it's not a good idea. Like no one's done it yet really like this, because most of the podcasts were like lots of different topics in one podcast, right? And I was like, no one's really like deep dived for this. But this is kind of what I want to do. And I want to set a time limit to it, because that also to me was really important. It's like you need to be able to showcase that you can do a topic and wrap it up in a specific time. Even though sometimes we've done ones where I was like, flip, we could probably go on for like another hour. But like we're going to keep it like this. And then I still like, I wrote the whole thing down. And then I came up with like a bunch of other, I think I sent you like 2 or 3 other shitty ideas, but it's just because I didn't want you to think that like all I had was this. But actually all I had was that.
All right, there was a bit. Like, good job I picked that one then, okay.
Yeah, I was like, that was, I mean, if you read, I haven't read the message, but I'm pretty sure like I sold that one so hard at the start and like went into, because I knew that that's what I wanted. And then when you came back, you're like, the first one, I was like, yes, that's exactly, like the others were not a good idea.
Well played.
But that was kind of what I wanted. And then I think it just worked because I think it's a cool concept, but I enjoy it because I think it's also, for me, I think it's helped me get better at my job, because now focusing, and like sometimes we have a topic and we bring in a guest and like you can feel it's kind of 30 minutes in, you're like, oh shit, what I thought was a super interesting conversation is kind of, it's done its course now, right? So now we're here and we've kind of said everything that needs to be said. So it's my job now to try and figure out where we go from here. And I worked so hard at the start on that show where like I would plan everything. So I kind of knew you would tell me who the guest is and I would kind of be able to guess how they would answer certain things because I know their personalities and how they feel about things. And so I would like set up this train of where the questions would go and how we would get to a certain point. And if you watch the original episodes, like I would ask very big, broad questions, take you down the funnel, do that whole thing. I like that it's kind of developed to now where I'm like, fuck it, I'm just going to start with the question I want to ask. And like, I think we've been able to build up like a rapport.
People get what the show as well is. I think people get the premise of the show now too, you know?
Yeah. And I love, like, I think for me, so originally when we spoke about doing it, you had said to me, this is a really good way for you to be showcased and hired. I think it was like 4 episodes in. I was like, fuck, I could just do this. Like, to be honest, like I just really enjoy doing this. And I think that for me was really exciting because I found something that I just really love doing, which is like we just get to sit and talk for an hour about CS with like random people and just like have super cool conversations that sometimes go completely off, or have Cassard lose his mind about Falcons, which is just my favorite thing in the world. But like it's a really fun, it's just a fun thing to do. And it's also been like, it's cool because it's made me have to like improve in certain places. And like I said, like learn more and get a little bit more in depth into how I want to do things and structure things. And I just love, I think it made me realize that like I love CS and I love making content around, but not everything has to be on a broadcast. Like you can have the freedom to kind of take it in different directions. And it made me less afraid to try stuff. So now like I started B-side baddies with Donna just to try something and see what it like, and I'm not as concerned as I used to be about like, oh, this might not look good or you might not get hired now. Now I'm kind of like, well, are you having fun doing this? And are you learning something in the process and then doing it that way? But that for me was like, Feed the Trolls just became like a thing where I was like, shit, if I could just do this all the time, I would. Like, it's freaking fun. I think we do really cool topics. The people we get, like, there's so many people we've got to like have on that are super entertaining. That first Babski episode when we brought Babski on with you and like, I was so worried because
you didn't know what's going to happen.
Online stuff, what's going to happen, and then I still remember like all the comments afterwards where people were just like, "Holy shit!" Like Babski's really like he's really funny, and and I was like, "Yes, Babski's exactly like that. He just never came across that way on a desk, and now you get to see his personality. Stuff like that is freaking cool." And we also just like I think that we hit those that's the 3 marks, right? Informative, educational, entertaining. So I love that show, but I'm super biased as well. So
No, the funny thing is, obviously I understand why there are like players or personalities who are like a tiny bit intimidated to come on a stream with me, but people have to understand, if they accept the invitation, then it's always going to be fine, isn't it? Because first of all, I am going to be more generous than maybe my persona implies, because we're doing a show together. I'm not going to roast the person on the show. Like the only times I've ever done that in any content online is when, like, for example, I do that Four Horsemen show with Monty and Richard, and it's always when it's like that, it's a guest they picked that I wouldn't have picked. You know, it's essentially like two out. Like, I haven't said you can't have him on, but if the other two say they want him on, okay, we'll do it. But then if that guy also, I think's either hostile or being a bit shitty, then yeah, I might roast them. I would never do that on my own shows, though. I do think when someone is a guest, I take that term quite literally. You should treat them like a guest. You should go out your way to sort of extend the olive branch. You should try and make them feel welcome. Certainly, if they're certain people like Bob's going, yeah, I'm going to roast them. Don't worry about that. But even then, I'll do it in that sort of like wink, wink. You know, we're all mates. We're all having a drink, aren't we? It's all cool. Don't overreact. Go on, what are you going to say?
I learned, no, but this is something I learned from you. And it's like, I feel like it's kind of pointless because this will be on your channel. So people watching this are not the typical Thorin haters that roam the internet who like speak some of the weirdest shit. But one of the things that I learned from you with Feed the Trolls is I have watched you come into an episode and I am fully aware of what your opinion is on the topic at hand. And you will see that the guest feels more comfortable taking your opinion. And you will immediately be okay with letting them go and take that space. And you'll just sort of pivot. And I've seen you be like I think when we did the Vulgar episode about like sort of women in the scene, you will immediately take a back seat because you understand that like in this particular context, she needs to speak more, right?
Sure.
And you'll allow that to happen and start asking questions. Or sometimes you'll see that like, so we've had a couple of like HLTV journalists that come on who maybe the first time are like,
for
really
sure.
difficult to get stuff out of. And these were in the early episodes when I wasn't either. And you'll like immediately come in and just sort of take up more space because they're leaving that space. And I was like, there is a broadcast skill there that people, I don't think if you're not in the scene, you don't see, which is the ability to kind of read someone and adjust yourself according to what they need in order to make the show good. And that to me is something that so many people starting out in esports maybe don't realize. It's not about you, it's about the show. It's about the product, it's about the players and the teams and the product that we're putting out. And sometimes you will have to fall on your sword or change the way you're going to do something to ensure that that product is what it needs to be. And you're like, it's that weird thing of you're only as good. I think, again, actually, this came from Reddit where he said you're only as good as the weakest link in a broadcast.
Ooh, that's
so like
fire,
when you take and I remember, like this was ages ago and I've only just remembered it, where he said like you have to look at the whole team and the weakest link is everyone is only as good as that person. So your job is actually to get that person to the level that they need to be. Obviously his method's questionable, but for the most part, that's something that, like, I think watching you on Feed the Trolls with other people, I was straight away, I think it was like the first 10 episodes, I was like, shit, that's exactly what's happening here. Like, it's so clever. So hard to do, though, because you've got to put your ego aside sometimes. And, like, maybe, I suppose, like, maybe you want to be funny and you have a banger line and you've realized that that person's not going to pick it up and you have to adjust accordingly and things like that. But that is a skill that I don't think people outside of broadcast truly appreciate. And it's a skill very little people have. And I also think it's just not, I don't know if that's an actual skill you can train into someone. I think that's just something you either get or you don't.
I mean, in my case, I think part of it also is that I have the bizarre position where I simultaneously have been the person who's like the expert with the mic that you want to hear, but I've also been from all the talk shows and the interviews. I've been the interviewer too. And so but it's where I am consciously doing what you're talking about, which is essentially the best examples, if someone's a fan of Feed the Trolls, would be, think about the episode when we had Taz on recently, right? There's not that many Thorin opinions in that episode. A lot of the time, I could even talk and maybe more eloquently than Taz say some of the things he was going to say. But the premise of that episode isn't a normal episode. That isn't me and a HLTV guy talking about some CS stuff. That's like we're sort of trying to give Taz a platform in quite an awkward moment in his career to simultaneously address some of the things people don't get behind the scenes. But also, we're going to make it palatable and make a little bit of jokes every now and then. But we're going to be a little bit kid gloves. So on that one, yeah, you're right. Like on that, if he starts going off on something, I'm just going to give him the space, mate. I'm just going to go, look, keep going, just keep, address the next thing. But I know what you mean. If I ever sense in someone that they're a bit reticent, or actually maybe they need permission to talk about a topic, there are times when I'll sort of be like, give me the ball, and then I'll just go do my thing, and I will absolutely, to a fan, that might look like I'm being selfish and I'm hogging the mic, but I know what you mean. The real problem is, this is why I don't get mad, believe it or not, at fans who do that thing of like, you're interrupted all the time. It's like, mate, there's no way to say this without sounding arrogant. I'm really good at knowing when to interrupt. Like, I have a good sense for, like, here's another thing you learn from being an interviewer. You learn when the person is doing that thing by reading their face that they've actually ran out of their point, but they're circling around like a fucking plane looking for a strip to land on. They're trying to find the next point, but they can't get it, and they're just keeping circling because they don't want to just end on nothing. You can't end on half a sentence. That's when I know when to sort of be like, but it's like, and then I'll take it off to hopefully where they want to go with the convo next, and we can pass it back. But I know what you mean. The problem with that, this is why I said earlier on about technical skills, a lot of them will be invisible to a fan at home because you're not thinking about these things. You haven't had to yourself develop that skill. But once you see certain technical on-camera skills, that's where you really realise that's the depth of how good someone is in broadcast, in my opinion. So, some of that is consciously done, and a lot of it is like, I have a million reps doing it on events, and by the way, that's another thing that coming from the era of doing Phil's helped with, because if I'd come up in the era like now, maybe I would just do the segment where you speak when spoken to, you speak what you're spoken to about, and you answer the question. But I came in the era when it was like, essentially, if you don't keep talking, we have to throw to one of those dreaded screens that just does a countdown that's not even real and just resets every half an hour. Well, you know what? I know that if you're the guy at home, you might think I'm waffling, but you'd rather listen to this than that fucking countdown that's imaginary, mate. So on this one, I'll just keep going until the guy tells me to stop. So it is. I know what you mean. It's a really nuanced topic. It's not as simple as it seems, but also it's like you have to sort of done a bit of it to know why it's hard. I know what you mean.
100%. And it's something that no one will appreciate because it's not the thing that you're looking for. But I do think that show has helped me as well. Like when you talk about filling, like doing Feed the Trolls, I think my fills now when we have to waste time is so much better because I just understand where someone wants to go. And I feel like I now know I'm better at going, okay, we're going to go down this road, but I can get you back to where I need to be really quickly when we have to get into game and things like that. So it's like I've learned a lot of skills from it, but I've also I think it's also like it's been bad in a way because now I just get mega frustrated sometimes where I'm like, why are we doing this? Like, you can play all your pictures and stuff. Let us just talk about whatever the hell we want.
Sure.
Like, that's what people actually want. Like, I legitimately do not understand why you have not just... I get that you have to show your sponsor graphics and all of that, but people don't have to talk about what's on the screen. They talk about whatever they want.
But it's, I'm not exaggerating when I say on social media, look, producers don't want to hear this. But if it was up to me, really big events wouldn't have pre and post game desks like they do now. You'd have like a between the maps desk where, you analyse the game. I would just have the pre-show and the post-show be podcasts essentially live. Like, because as you're saying, that's what people want to talk about anyway. It's almost what is the Twitch chat talk about after the game. Let's talk about that. Should Spirit sign a player still even though they won clone because they didn't play Vitality? These are the things you want to talk about. You don't really want to talk about like some obscure detail about like Mirage that you set up earlier on. Like, that's gone. The game's finished. I know what you mean.
I've always that's my biggest thing when this is a very strong opinion. So maybe people watching don't have it, but like, I don't want to analyze around at the end of the match. When someone's won, they've won. And then when an analyst comes and goes, I think we should break down, round 8. I'm like, why? Like, Spirit's won. No one cares. I don't care how they got there anymore. They've won. Like that. But that's me. That's a personal thing. I'm like, let's talk about something else. We don't need to we can talk about how they won, but I just don't think we should be breaking down rounds. And that's kind of where I've always sat on it. Sometimes if an analyst wants to do the round, we do the round and I go that route because that's what they want. But I've always felt that like, exactly like you said, like the pre and post show should just be fun. Like it's just about talking about those like bigger storylines and like getting into like the nitty gritty and seeing where it's going to run. And there's so many personalities in the space who can do that and who've shown that they can do it time and time again. And then, yes, in between maps, do the big breakdowns and have the analytical stuff. But like, just have a little bit of fun in the mix. That I don't understand. I mean, I think I said this to you with like Feed the Trolls. I was like, why can't they just like hire us and then we go to the event
shit, wouldn't it?
And we do the show at the start. And we can do it at the end. Like you just have us come in at the end and we do what we're doing here. I think I once said to you, like, why can't we just do that? Like, why can't we just set up a broadcast at the event? But
co-streaming and all that. Yeah, we all know the technicalities.
But that would be pretty cool. Like, I feel like if you're doing it with Only Pixel, why can't you bring in like a podcast Yeah, like I think that would be.
I would even
like,
say the one event I did in the last few years, that Elisa Masters Finland one, that's essentially what the whole desk was the whole time. It was just like by the numbers with Maui Snake guest appearing, basically. Like, you know, it kind of was.
And people love it. Like I was like,
True.
people love that. Because again, I think that people like watch so much Counter-Strike now.
Yes.
They're on HLTV every day.
Yes.
They've seen all the stats. I'm not saying that it's not important. Like if you have a massive pop-off, like for sure, highlight it. But let's be honest, sometimes group stage games are just boring. Like nothing interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times I've watched a VP game where I'm like, nothing of interest actually happened here. I want to talk about something else. Like, and I guarantee you someone watching at home, if they're still watching, feels exactly the same way we feel. I mean, I understand the thing of like we have to give all the players their flowers and things, but there's ways to do that without having to just bore everyone. But that's, again, one day maybe I must just start a tier. I would never do that, but we could do that and just do the show the way I want.
By the way, another part of my concept of doing our show as well is I'll give someone an example, like a separate example for the moment. People might remember last year there was that whole drama with Donna where at the time we only knew her as the person on Only Pixels stream. And by the way, no matter what people tell you, unless you're one of the newer talents, we don't really fuck with Only Pixel. He's all right. Okay, I think he's all right now. But like, we don't fuck with him in the sense that he's more like Zoomer humor, you know, and he's more like, you know, like, oh, overreaction. That's not really like people like me and Yanko. We are boomers on that. We're like, that's not bloody music. Turn it over. We are those sorts of people, right? So generally, we didn't know her from that stream, really. We just knew her as Nexa's girlfriend. And then what was she doing on Twitter? In a way that doesn't play very well. I don't think she knew how she was coming off. She just came across like the nightmare girlfriend / mum of the player who's getting offended on their behalf that you're commenting on them as a player. And it's like, yeah, but love, we're doing the water cooler talking. You are aware Twitter isn't like your fucking front room. Like, we're just having a conversation about who should be cut from G2. And she was doing that thing where obviously she like attacked Launders because she had the back and forth for him about like their whatever Nexus roles and fucking the team. I can't even remember what the original story was about. And she famously, because she said that now iconic line about being an ugly hater, I can tell you in that moment I actually realised, oh, fuck, she doesn't know this, but she's actually like capsized to any chance she has of being accepted by like normal fans because they're just going to take it as she's like some annoying Karen or something, or she's like over-invested in the next angle. She doesn't like get the idea we can all talk about CS. And so what happened actually, I'll give a little secret piece of law no one knows here. When she then did a reply to me on Twitter, it's quite famous. I don't reply to replies on Twitter because I don't like to read the replies because you have to read all the horrible comments in doing so. So unless it's someone I already follow, I don't tend to notice that someone did it. But I saw she did a reply where she was kind of doing the same thing. She was a little bit antagonistic, sort of going, yeah, but you don't know the roles in the team, you know, and why they're doing this. And what I thought was, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll just test now, is this person actually like legit, or are they just like annoyed and trying to like tell me off, basically? And I thought, what I'll do is I'll just in good faith reply as if this was just someone I know asking me a question. And I sort of replied something like, well, you know, I can see why you would say that, but actually from our perspective, we think this thing and we don't know what's going on in the team. I gave some like, no, and actually she replied in a way that was actually, I would say, like, receptive. Like she actually seemed like she wasn't trying to like antagonize me or like score points on me or fuck. So what I did intentionally, people might not know this is actually part of the origin story of like kind of her transformation, is I just brought her on to like the very next episode of Snake and Banter with the entire notion of like, we're not going to dance around, we're going to address that literal thing about launders, and we're going to make like, because what we're doing, this is why I tie it into what I'm talking about here, is one, when you do that, when you see the person on camera in that setting, they become so much more palatable. You can't get annoyed with someone the way you can through text and a tweet, and also you don't always know the context. What were they tweeting about before? Why is this person annoyed? There's all these things you can imagine about how they're reacting and why they said that you won't get on a podcast. You'll see on the podcast who they are. Also, I think that when someone like me brings you on a show like that, I'm trying to signal to my fans who watch my content, like, this person's someone who's in our group. Like, they get it. It's like, if this is banter, they get that this is a joke and they're part of the gang. Maybe they're on the fringes and we're gradually bringing them in, but they're real CS people. They're not just someone who's like an outskirts person who's just going to be getting mad about this, and they've got another side to them. So look, they're funny, they can make points about the game. Because I already knew, by the way, that the way she was talking, even though a fan would think you're just saying that because Nexa told you that, no, I can tell she's like a hardcore fan herself. She streams all the time. The joke is, I bet some of her opinions that were really strong about Nexa, he actually didn't even agree with, or maybe even tell her, was probably like, bloody hell, settle down, you know, like, like, that's just who she is. She wasn't doing that to just be like, so I thought she was mischaracterized. So similarly, I thought if we do a show, it will show my audience, they'll get to see your personality and get to see that you're like one of us and you're in the group of like me and Richard and people like that. But also, another thing, I'll tell people this overtly, this is a bit of the secret sauce, is the beauty of doing a show like that has a different guest every time. And hopefully we do run the gamut. We want like, you know, smaller people ourselves who we're platforming, like HLTV writers, like you say. By the way, people who I hope would be good on podcasts themselves, tends to be why I would get them on. But also we want players and we want coaches and we want famous people. I also think that's really good when you're in a position like you're in, where you're trying to get more work, because it's automatic networking. Now you've already talked to that player before you meet him at the event, or you talk to a teammate of his, or he's seen an episode of the show maybe even, or if they're people around the scene, now even a HLTV writer or some journalist can come up to you at the event. They won't feel the same intimidation or the distance. And also, I'll just throw this in there for you. If people don't know, except for the odd one, like the Bobski one and the GL one, I do book the shows, but that's also because I have a lot of experience booking shows. I booked all my shows, some of the Insight, all the ones in CS. And I will say in your case, I do generally try to get someone who's good for the convo. But sometimes, just to be swaggy, I will just try and get like with no warning, I'll try and get like a giant name guest that you wouldn't even think to ask. Just because then if I just drop that in the chat, like, yeah, Friday at like 3, you know, it's just this guy, you know, it's like fucking just Taz or whatever, you know. Because I know that'll also be fucking cool, won't it? Like, it'll be a little moment for you that you'll be like, oh, fucking hell, that's awesome. Like, I think that's cool as well. I like that.
Oh, it was so cool. I think, my base was, I mean, I'd worked with him already, but when you got Sponge on, that was just like, I was like, oh my God, Chad's coming on my podcast. That's so fun. Like, that to me was really cool. Obviously, the Taz one was just sick. But I also think, like, the thing it's been really cool is you do kind of match the guests according to like what we're doing. So
I do try to make it tailored to the topic. Yeah, what I think we can get out. I think we do a good job of that as well. It's why sometimes it might be a smaller guest, but I think the episodes sometimes work because maybe that's the only person who can talk about that topic. Like the obvious example is the Messioso ones have like the lowest views, but there's no one better to talk about those nerd fucking GitHub VRS topics. This is the best.
Do you know what the thing is with those ones is I'm always like, because I come out like if you don't know, so I'll tell Thorin the topics that I think I want to do, and then normally I'll like sometimes I don't give him an option. I just tell him what I want to do, and then every so often I'll be like, here's 2 or 3, and then once we've got the topic, he gets the guest. And the Messioso ones for me are they were always such important conversations.
Yeah, agreed.
And they get the worst views because no one cares about the VRS bullshit, but it's like the most important conversation, and he is so enlightening in what he shares. And I get upset every time because when I put it live, I'm like, this is so good. Like, this is so educated. Like, people need to watch this. And then the views are nowhere near they need to be because people are like, oh, VRS, who cares? And I'm like, but it's so important to listen to.
No, you have to realise people really would just rather. And by the way, we also low-key get educated ourselves. We don't know what the fuck we talk about with half of that, so it's also useful. No, the joke is people really would rather just have me and JL tell each other we're both ugly and idiots or something like. That's more entertaining to them, apparently.
It's like, yeah, I mean, now he's on the, now we can't put Hooksy sucks in the subject title, but I think like for the whole of last year, all I needed to do was just be like, Hooksy sucks, and everyone would be in there being like, yeah, I love this show. Meanwhile, we're talking about like something completely different. But so long as you were on the Hooksy hate train, you were fine. That's like, I mean, I suppose that's just CS, right? As well. Like for me, I think we've had a little bit of liberty in the last couple of episodes where it's been less about what people. I've done this where it's like it's not necessarily what everyone is talking about, but more what I think everyone should be talking about. Sometimes I do think that's important as well. So the VRS, they're important episodes. They're important that they're there. But I've learned that no one cares enough about tier 2 in any state or form.
They really don't, sadly. Like people think I'm like I'm just elite. It's also, by the way, we all are. It's people just have to pretend. Oh no, it's like a bleeding heart. Oh, I care about people on the other side of the world. You don't really, but whatever. Just pretend you do. I've got a couple more questions before we wrap. Right, one goes like this. So this is also a tricky question to answer, but you're a big girl. You'll figure out how to do it. So one of the trickier things in your specific position in Counter-Strike and as a woman and a host is there's an obvious area you're going to get offered work all the time. It's called ESL Impact. As long as there's a women's event, they're going to go, well, of course, we are inclusive, so we want women, and that's a famous woman, so why don't we bring her on? And I can tell, you referenced earlier, like, maybe you could have gotten work in VALORANT. I can guarantee you could have got work in VALORANT. Not only do they, on their main broadcast, go heavy to the whole, like, quota-filling check boxes for the main, but they also have the game changers too, which is their, like, version of Impact, basically. And I can tell you, this is an area where the joke is, even the people in esports who are representing potentially, like, inclusive politics don't realize they themselves are sometimes being exclusive, that they just think, well, you're a woman, it's a woman's event, you should work this event. And sometimes they might not offer you the other event. So it's a weird, that's why I say it's a tricky area. Because on the one hand, I'm sure sometimes you want to work these events. I'm sure there's a merit to working them, but you also don't want to kind of be typecast in a way.
I think I was really lucky because I did ESL Impact Valencia before like the ESL Impact League started. And that was just because I was trying to get CS reps. So I didn't even question it. I was just like, we're in. And then they didn't use me. They used Frankie Ward. She became like the host of ESL Impact. And then the next time I got asked for ESL Impact, I think it was after I'd done the Paris Major. I think it was, my timeline might be wrong. I think it was after the Paris Major. But she had ultimately, she released a blog post, I think, where she basically said like she was stepping away from CS because she wasn't getting hired for like the tier 1 stuff or whatever.
I think she did a blog like that, yeah.
Or something along that. And then they obviously reached out to me. But at that point, I felt like it was okay to, because there is a worry of being typecast. I'm not even, like, I'm straight up say it. Like, I think that there isn't a single woman that doesn't come into the scene who is absolutely terrified. And how sad is it that this is what it is if you do ESL Impact, you will be typecast as the women's CS person, and then you never get out of there.
Right.
And then that's all you get, right? And then that's it. Not that there's anything wrong with women's CS, but it is a limited, it creates a very limited environment for you in terms of work and opportunity and growth.
And everyone wants to be on Cologne in the majors, of course. Yeah, that's totally human nature. Of course. Of course.
I want to be where Nico is playing. Like, that's kind of the vibe that you want. So I think I was, in that sense, because by the time Frankie stepped down, I'd kind of been able to build my reputation outside of Impact. I didn't mind going back. I want to, because I do think it's an important, I think it's important to showcase women's CS, and I enjoy it. Like, I find it it's fun as well. I enjoy the people I work with there, but I wasn't worried about being typecast at that point. But it is always a concern. Like, it does always sit in the back of my head where I'm like, especially with ESL, where I'm like, oof, I don't want to be she's the women's Counter-Strike host. You know, you never want to be like that. That's always my worry. And I don't think anyone who works on that project wants that either. I think that I do believe that a lot of the people behind the scenes want to see people on that broadcast like move out into into the other stuff.
Right.
They're not getting hired on the other stuff, so that's sort of stopping it. But like, it should have been I think it should be a space where, not just with the players, but with that broadcast talent, that it is a space where you can kind of create an opportunity for people to work, but then also to grow out of it. I've always felt that women's leagues shouldn't be we have women's leagues. I think they should have been designed to like get people into the main leagues and then start playing. That's always been my feeling on it. I think the idea of having a safe space, I would be very careful. The idea of having a safe space forever is not good. That becomes exclusive. I think that women's leagues should have always been, we are giving you a place to get experience so you can move out of here. And in South Africa for a couple of years ago, I pushed for something. It was called the Valkyrie Challenge, which ended up becoming a women's league. And then I got mad because maybe it was short-sighted, but a lot of people who got involved, like the brands and stuff, there was more money going into the women's league than the men's teams in South Africa.
Right.
And I was just like, what the hell like, that can't be happening. Like, that's not right, because the level of Counter-Strike is not at the level to make this much money. But then what was also happening is there were all these women's teams, which was very exciting, but they wouldn't play in any of the main leagues. Right. So there was like 2 teams that would, but everyone else, like when the women's league was finished for the year, they just stopped playing CS until the next year. And I was like, this is not what should be happening. Like, the idea is that this just gives them an extra opportunity and they can go play everywhere else, not just set up shops so they can win some prize money and then never play anywhere. So like, that for me is ESL Impact should be a space where like broadcast talent and players are using it to springboard themselves into other things. That also the TO needs to help with that, I suppose, as well.
Right, obviously the topic of getting hired is always a tricky one in Counter-Strike in particular, because there isn't one TO to impress or to, pass the threshold of being hired by. if people haven't noticed, when I even do these interviews with like the most legendary, like the number one person in the world at their job, commentator, analyst, even they aren't always certain next year who will I be working with. Will I be working with this person I did before? Obviously, some TOs even do like weird mind games where like they drop you for one event that might not even be the big one because I don't know, maybe they're angling to get like a cheaper day rate for the next one, or sometimes it's even fucked up things like they do think you just need to be humbled or something. You've done too many events, you get a bit too big for your britches, all sorts of shit swirling around. Remember, they're people too, they've got their own egos. So it's always a tricky topic of like, how is it to deal with the challenge of, you've worked in theory with every major TO, but you've never had like the 2-year contract where you were definitely going to be all the events. Sometimes you're on the biggest event, but then not the next small ones. Sometimes you work with them 1 year, the next year I'm guessing they just don't call, or they go another direction. They pick someone else. I would just ask, what is your experience like in this sense? How do you manage it? Are you someone? I think this goes along with the imposter syndrome. You said it earlier on. You do seem to do that thing where if you don't get hired for an event, you do just think like, well, that's it. They've caught me. They figured out I'm shit. This was always going to happen. It's over for me. Back to South Africa. Oh shit, I'm already in South Africa. That's good. I don't have to move back and sell the apartment in Berlin. Right, time to go to rage again, I guess. Like, you almost have that vibe, even though I don't think that's true. I hope you're going to be hired for loads of events. What's the experience like for you in this sense?
It's so shit, if I'm honest, because I hate this is the one thing I hate about the industry is like, so you'll do the events, you ask for feedback. Obviously, no one gives you real feedback. They just all tell you how great you were and how happy they were. And then you never hear from, like, you just don't hear from them for, like, this year. There's a TO that I thought I did great work with last year. This year, just not a word, nothing, zip. And you do sort of sit there being like, what did I do wrong? What didn't work? And then I think that you overanalyze everything. Like, have I tweeted the wrong thing? Did I do the wrong thing at the event? I thought this was really funny. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe they didn't like that it got, you just overthink it. And I think, unfortunately, if you don't have, because there's obviously some talent that have long-term contracts with TOs, right? So they're locked in. So they're guaranteed X amount of work. That's a nice safety net. But I also understand that for someone like me, you do have to earn that spot, right? That's the years of working with the TO before you get to that point. So it's tough because you go, okay, cool. Well, you know that work is out of the question because that person's in there with that contract. So now it's already like made it smaller. And then TOs are great. Like I do think I'm actually lucky. I've spoken to other talent. They do talk to me. So I know they don't talk
that's
to other
good.
talent.
Yeah.
So a lot of other talent say that they just don't get replies. There is a TO that just doesn't reply to me, but then like the other TOs, they'll talk to me. But I think that's also the problem is like, we'll be talking about rates and they'll be talking about opportunities and things. And then when the event comes around, they're like, oh, okay, we've gone in a different direction. And you're like, dude, it's like 3 months of backwards and forwards emails. What happened?
Right.
And then obviously you're like, well, what was wrong? What was the direction? What am I doing? Maybe it's because I haven't been on an event. Maybe they didn't like this. So like, I think you can get a little bit stuck in your head. But I have realized, because I've had this conversation with you and I've actually started to realize now, I think that this year was a very scary time for a lot of TOs because of VRS.
Oh, right.
And I do think this is my copium to get me through the year. Sometimes you're just going to go with who is the biggest name with the biggest social following. That's
the safest option. Yeah, safe.
Yeah, because we know if this person comes in, they have done this so many times that there is absolute, like they are not like this is not someone that maybe gets nervous or hasn't done this this is someone that is like they've been doing this for years. They know exactly how to do this and their following is really big. They're safe. We know exactly what we're going to get from them. There we go. We just put them in. Like that'll work. I think that is possibly why we're also like, I've seen the complaint, like we're seeing the same talents over and over and over again on all the different casts. But I think it's a safety thing because right now it's like, well, shit, we don't have all these agreements. We're not guaranteed the teams. Like, how do we do this in such a way that it's as safe as it can possibly be, which is how I'm getting through not necessarily getting hired for stuff. But I also have accepted that my style is not going to be palatable to every TO. And for them, their show may not look, maybe they're a little bit scared of what I'm doing. Maybe they're worried because I kind of throw out a random joke and just go off on a tangent. Maybe they're scared of where that could go. Maybe, like all of that comes into play as well, I suppose. So that's kind of what I tell myself, but it's mad frustrating. Because you just don't know, right? Like, I'd be okay if someone was just like, nah, you're shit at your job. Okay, cool, then I can work at it. But they kind of go, oh, we really love working with you. You're great. We're not hiring you this year.
Yes. No, the worst one I can easily tell you from knowing all the talent is, like, here's the thing, as you can imagine, this is one area I am like my persona. I never fucking back and forth with people. If they message me to hire me, okay, I'll do the event for this amount. Otherwise, like, don't message me. If you're not going to hire me, don't fucking message me with some polite thing. Fuck off. Like, because I actually hate what you're talking about here. I also hate the one where they sort of like string you along, where it's like, maybe they do like you as a person, or maybe they would work with you at some point in the future, but they don't plan to now. But they can't just tell you, like, fuck off, I'm not working with you. They have to just sort of like, maybe, let's see on the next one. Like, because that's what tortures people is the hope, right? They're thinking that you might get the next gig.
I'm going to overshare now because this recently happened to me, but I won't say who it was, but I got this, I'd been getting message after message being like, oh, we'll be in touch soon. And then I'd follow up being like, have you made a decision yet? We haven't decided. And then I got a PUBG offer. And I was like, oh, crap. Like, there's a problem here. So I was like, listen, I've actually been offered something else. Have you made a decision? And the first message back was, we have not finalized or made a decision yet. Okay, cool. So there's still hope, right? So now I'm like, okay, I can't. Like, so I was like, listen, I don't want to be pushy or whatever, but I'm in this situation now where this other offer's come along. Like, I need to make a decision. Can you just help me make this decision here? Like, I know you haven't made the final list, but if I'm in contention, please let me know. And I respect them for their honesty, but they came back and they were like, well, we've actually made the offer to someone else, but they haven't signed the contract yet.
So you were like the backup, basically, right?
So I'm basically like, okay, so where we're at is one, you actually have finalized the talent. So the original email of you haven't, that is not true. You finalized them. But now what you've done is you've actually made it worse, because now you've gone, hey, listen, maybe they don't sign the contract. Maybe that opportunity is, and I was like, I can't live like this. Like, one, like, just
got to take the sure thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like, but also just send out when you send that email, don't say, oh, we haven't finalized. Just be like, hey, we've chosen our talent. Like, there's some contracts that are up for, like, are still under discussion, but first choices have been made. Like, that would just make life a lot easier. But it was that whole, like, we haven't decided, and also actually they just haven't signed the contract. Like, that for me was just, I was like, because now I'm still sitting there being like, but I really want to do CS, so maybe I should just wait in case they don't sign the contract, which is not a good headspace for you to be in at all. But I have just accepted that that's the job that we do. And I think what was really good for me was, again, when we started Feed the Trolls, because I think there is a lot of people in the scene who the only thing they have is broadcast work. And that's like, for all of us, I do think most of us are huge fans of Counter-Strike, and we just love being part of that world. But if the only thing you have is broadcast work, it's a lot harder when you're not getting broadcast work. Whereas I kind of feel like now with Feed the Trolls and like a few of the others that I've started, the loss isn't as hard, because I'm like, okay, that sucks. I'm just going to keep making my stuff. I'm going to improve my stuff. Like, I'm going to work a bit harder on this. Like, that's my motivation, to make my thing cooler, so that I'm not reliant on you. Like, you don't control my happiness in this space, which is something that I think is just so important. Because at the end of the day, if your entire, not only your livelihood, but like your joy and your happiness is reliant on whether people choose you or not for a job, that leads to crazy.
Oh, those are some crazy stakes. Yeah, of course.
This, like, I see this so many times.
As you're sort of hinting at, essentially the problem here is they're not just saying you didn't get a gig. They're almost saying, like, I reject you. In a way, right? Well,
that's the thing. You do take it personally. And I saw a thread once, because yet another broadcast talent had done something and it got cancelled. And someone was like, why does it keep happening with broadcast talent? Like, how is it that it's all of them? And I wanted to reply and say, well, because I think that they just mentally get so messed up.
Yeah.
Like, this is their entire life is dependent on these TOs, like your livelihood, how you pay the bills. And then also, like, you're at this job where you're on camera and everyone's telling you how great you are. And you probably will at some point, everyone has, drink the Kool-Aid and start believing how great you are. And then you go home and they don't hire you because, like you said, someone wanted to teach you a lesson about your ego, which is a very real thing that happens and is so messed up. So that messes you up. And then you're getting hired again, and now you're scared you're not going to. I was like, the entire life that you live is if there is even a little bit of like mental instability there, you're just going to have it 10 times worse, right? Like that's just going to, it's just going to feed it into complete crazy town. So yes, that's why so many broadcast talent do the most heinous things and completely break down and fuck up. Like, I think it's because they were like on a one-way ticket there. You have to find something outside of the broadcast that can censor you. And that's why I think, like for me, Feed the Trolls was the start of that and realizing that. But I think I keep saying to a lot of people, I'm like, just find something else so that this isn't the be-all and end-all, because it's not healthy to live in the state of just constant, like it's that whole thing of like constantly being like, please choose me.
Yes.
Please choose me.
Yes.
Or I really hope this person decides not to work so that you can choose me. Like that's no way that you should be living at all.
No, I mean, one of the reasons why I personally also do so many podcasts that are with other broadcast talent and or tell them they should like stream or something is because even though, yes, look, it can't replace the income you lose or the opportunity, but it gives you purpose still. Like the real problem with the broadcast gig is if you get hired, everything's amazing, everything's going up, it's the world, you're doing all the, if you don't, it's all nothing, it's barren, it's over, you're never going to get hired again, there's no adventure. It's so extreme. I know what you mean. The stakes people are playing at, even from the hiring aspect, then add in what fans are thinking, what the pros think. You're in a maelstrom of self-criticism, judgment. It's all over the place. Along these lines, though, one TOI I'm glad you did get to work with more recently is PGL. I know technically you got in via, you did the Perfect World Shanghai Major, which obviously they always went out their way to stress. They didn't host, that wasn't a PGL Major. They hosted the English language stream of it. So you did that. And obviously you've done some of the actual PGLs. You did Bucharest and Astana this year. And one of the reasons I'm glad you work with them is because, one, since Richard Lewis is there, they have adopted, unsurprisingly, the culture of how I like desks to be, where you can actually be a bit more free-flowing, you can call people out. By the way, spoiler, Richard Lewis absolutely does not censor his opinions. He gives them quite forthrightly, and he certainly does both disagree with and call out his analysts on the fucking desk when they're right there. In fact, his whole style basically is almost more the sort of like frat culture of like, we're even going to make people like do forfeits if they're wrong almost. It's almost that level of like, he likes people to get roasted. So one, I knew the vibe would be more your style. And then two, this isn't a minor thing, maybe to other people in CS, they still think Richard's just some old guy complaining. Richard Lewis is an actual legend of broadcast esports himself. Like, even though I've known him and he's been a mate of mine, actually when he came back in 2024 to do those events for PGL initially, I remember thinking like, I actually forgot how good he is at fucking hosting, mate. Like, he is one of the best. So it must be cool to work those events with him and to have that vibe.
So we don't really get to work together because obviously we ran on different shifts. But
it's not cool to be at the event, though, right?
Super cool. I watch, like I've sat in.
And wasn't it something like you kept like, this is one area people don't know with the tech girl personality and the Rich Lewis interacted. He had to keep telling you to stop trying to put stuff about him on social media or something, right? Like photos of him when he's drinking. There you go.
Told me to stop filming him. Yeah, I was just like, I can't.
He is an old man in that sense, true. Okay.
And then I saw a ridiculous TikTok that was trending. What was it? Where like basically the one person's like super excited and the other person's completely like not interested.
Okay.
And I was so excited because I saw it the one night and I was like, oh my God, Richard and I should do this. Like, this would be amazing. And then I was like, Richard, I have this TikTok. No.
Of course.
Like,
I know. I love it.
No. And I was like, but it's so good. No. It's just stop taking photos, stop. No, we're not. And I was like, okay. It was bloody brilliant, but he was just, it was like a constant joke. But I think what I love about PGL is everyone there is everyone who works that event is a fan of Counter-Strike. Like they legit, and they've been fans for so long. So like all the behind the scenes production stuff, they have stories because that crew's been together for so long. Whereas sometimes like when you work like a bigger event, there's always, like most of the production team is a fan of CS, but then there's always like some random sound guy who's like never really worked CS or whatever. PGL, everyone there is completely like huge, and they have stories, and they'll like, you'll be talking about what you want to do and like what the storylines are, and they will tell you something that happened so long ago and you didn't even know, and they'll give you like insight. So that was really cool. And then obviously like Richard is there, which I think again, just you can just learn from. Like I've sat in I think 2 finals now with him. PGL and Astana, he was so sick. He was actually like, I think he thought that I was sitting there in case they told him he had to go home. Because at one point he said to me, he's like, are you staying here because someone's told you I'm going to collapse or something? I was like, no, I'm actually just staying here because it's the final and that's cool. But like, if you collapse, I'm ready, you know? Okay. And I go, but yeah, like I think just learning from him is really cool. Because again, there's little things that I would say like Richard, you, Yanko, like Moses I've seen as well do it. Sponge and Machine, like little things that that come from years of experience that you will not learn unless you spend years doing this, or you do the crazy Psycho Sam thing and just watch like intently in the green room while you're prepping. Like I have sat silently next to Jason.
You're just observing people like David Attenborough in a documentary. God, observing
like
these
super
people in the
creepy.
wild.
But like I've seen Moses sit with Dinko, talking about the cast coming up, where he's going, taking out his notes, and like people don't see that, and then I just quietly listen, and you will learn so much about storytelling that, again, that is years and years of experience that you can like kind of, you won't learn all of it, but you can get stuff from it. And like just for like little things as well, like timing and tone and pace. And like with Richard, like he does do that frat boy vibe, and it looks very off the cuff, but it is so controlled with how he moves it out of where it is, where he goes with it. And also like he is amazing with how he'll set an analyst up and like prep them for what they need to do. And then because analysts do this sometimes where they just go on and on about their points and they don't realize they're just saying the same thing different ways. Like he'll pick it up way faster than anyone I know and move them out of there and things like that.
Yes.
Or like if they were super keen on saying something, but then when they say it, it doesn't really have any substance. He'll jump in so fast and like counter the point. And then you'll see this person like come alive and start like debating with him. And they don't realize that what he's actually done is just like kick them out of their head. Like you said, like sometimes they're so stuck in their head, he can get someone out. Like all of those things are just cool things you can learn from watching people. And you can watch them on a broadcast, but you get a lot more insight when you watch them in a green room as well. And then obviously you can try record them and put them on TikTok, but they'll tell you to stop.
Right, one point I actually said we would talk about, and I even said when we did this interview, we would talk about this at some point. And actually, in some clever way, like I'm Christopher Nolan making that film The Prestige, where the movie itself was actually a magic act that played out in the way they were describing. I've made it meta, because if someone's listened this far in the interview, it's over 3 hours long, it's quite a long interview, we talked about a lot of things, you think people don't want to hear you talk. In fact, on the episode 2 of B-Side Baddies, where you gave like the story of your time in CS, what was hilarious is the show is just you and Donna, but then you give your origin story, then go off. I was talking a bit too long there, sorry about that. And then she then follows suit, gives her story, but then feels obliged to go, yeah, sorry, you're talking a bit too long. And I want to just be the director off camera with like that foghorn, like, it's your show, and if you don't talk, there is no show. Because like in that moment, there is no fucking guest, there's no player there. Like, spoiler, if someone gets to this point in the interview, Sam, they do want to hear you talk. They want to hear expressly you talk about what you think with your opinions in your way. So I hope you appreciate that people do actually want to hear you. It's not just you queuing up Katie to say something funny, right?
I know. I think I got to get... So Launder said this to me when I saw him. So he did Feed the Trolls early on with us.
Yeah.
That one episode. And it was like months later, I was at an event with him. And I was like, dude, it was so cool that you came on Feed the Trolls. And he said, I actually did say to Duncan afterwards, like, I wish you would speak more, Sam. He was like, sometimes I actually do want to hear what you have to say. He was like, and I said to Duncan, you need to speak more. He's like, you should speak more. And that was like, for me, I was like, oh, I probably should. And I think it's just, I do think that it's that old school host mentality of like, no one cares what the host has to say. Your job is just to run the show. So then you go, well, and also like, I didn't play Counter-Strike professionally. So what the hell do I have to say? But I think I'm getting better at it. I mean, I did it's like been three hours. I went pretty long here talking. So I need to own that a little bit more. And be a bit more. I do have actually really strong opinions. I'm always a bit worried about putting them on the internet.
That is one area I can't relate, I'm afraid. Anyway,
yeah, there we go.
Anyway, at the end of this interview, do you have a final message for people? Is there anyone you'd like to thank or say hello to?
I don't really want to say hello to anyone. Sorry to anyone watching who was expecting a hello. I think I'm just really grateful that it is a bit of a silly one, but I am really grateful to the broadcast talent from before, who I've mentioned here, like yourself included and Richard and whatever, because before I got into this, I was doing a lot of other esports games, as we've learned, and I think there was always a misconception that the Counter-Strike crew was like very closed off.
Are we the ones who have all the campfire stories as though we're like the murderer in RC, right? Okay.
The
Right.
the arseholes and the clicks and whatever else.
Sure.
And I was like, I suppose, and they're like, lots of people used to say, they're like really difficult and they don't let anyone new in. I never had that experience. I think from like the RMRs, the first Paris major, like I walked into that Paris major and I did exactly what I always do. I'm just like, I know that everyone wanted Stunner to be hired, and I remember Machine was like, but he wasn't. You're here. Like, that's fucking sick. Own it. Like, everyone was like so friendly and welcoming, and no one made me feel like, even though I was well aware at the time that like I didn't really have the reps under my belt for a major, no one made me feel like they felt that way, even if they did. And I think I've just always, all the people that I watched who kind of inspired me and made me want to get into, have all been so welcoming and just like exactly what I thought they would be, which is like a bunch of crazy, fucking insane miscreants. But like, it's fun and we've got to learn. So I think if I was going to say thank you, I'd just say thank you to all of those people for like just making me realize that this is exactly what I thought it is. It is that like fun, crazy, just talking shit thing. And that's what Counter-Strike is supposed to be. Because I think maybe for a while, I was worried that what I imagined esports was nothing like that. But I think that was, for me, everyone taught me that it is exactly that. And even when people try to change it, we'll always just bring it back. And that's just how it's going to be.
I don't forget the people that support me. And in the case of this video, that would be Matt Pugnaccio Rakula, Jason, Jensen Go, Nikki, Tosh, Toucan, and you know who I'm always going to give the biggest shout out to, my boy Jerky's Minion. Do you want to ask a question for my video AMA? Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Maybe you want to find out who the next guest is on one of my interviews that I've already recorded but not yet released. Or maybe you want to take part in one of those fabled long-form discussions where you get to decide the topics. Well, if any of those perks or others tickle your fancy, simply click on the Patreon link in the description box below and put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today.